And so she had a son, and that was Boaz. Now, we notice at this stage that Boaz is an old man here, and yet he seems not to be married. We'll just go over to Ruth 3, verses 10 and 11. This is Boaz talking to Ruth later on, and he says, "Blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter, for thou hast shown more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning, inasmuch as thou followest young men, whether they be poor or rich." Now, this is very interesting. He's saying here that he's an old man and that he's not married. And so we see, well, Boaz is rich, and while under the law, he's quite legitimate. He's not really a foreigner, yet because of his father, he's legitimate because of his father, because the line went through the father, but he's not accepted by his own people in the sense of marriage, and his name reflects this. His mother was a foreigner, and he probably didn't look just like the Israelites either. And like I say, they didn't easily accept foreigners, even legitimate foreigners. And remember that because Ruth had been married to an Israelite, now as a widow, she is legitimately an Israelite herself, yet she's a foreigner, so she's not accepted. And Boaz was the same. And that's a very interesting thing. That Ruth happened on the field of Boaz is not so surprising, right? He is a mighty man of wealth, and so he's a big landowner. All his land is at Bethlehem, and this is where Ruth and Naomi are. It's also not so surprising that she happened on his land because God had a plan for them. And we need to have that in the back of our minds. She thought she happened on that land. God had a plan. While she is gleaning, Boaz comes to the land. Now, he lives in Bethlehem, and he already knows Ruth's story. Remember, it says all the city was moved about her when she came home. Everybody knew she'd come home, and he knew that she'd come home. And verses 2 and 11 and 12, chapter 2 and 11 and 12, what happens is Boaz comes out to check on the harvest, and he looks and he sees Ruth there, and he says to his overseer, he says, who's the woman gleaning there? And the overseer was a bit apologetic about it because she's a foreigner. And he says, well, that's Ruth the Moabitess that's come home with Naomi. And she asked me, could she reap? And I said she could. And so then Boaz said to Ruth, hearest thou not, my daughter? Go not to glean in another field, neither go from hence, but abide here fast by my hand, my maidens. And so he says to her, don't go and glean anywhere else, just glean here in my field. I'll see that you're protected and that the young men don't molest you, which was quite a common thing in those days, just as it is these days. And it says in verse 10, then she fell on her face and bowed herself to the ground and said unto him, why have I found grace in thine eyes that thou shouldest take knowledge of me, seeing I am a stranger? And she's not just saying that she's a stranger, he doesn't know her, she's saying she's a foreigner. And Boaz answered and said unto her, It hath been fully shown me all that thou hast done unto thy mother-in-law since the death of thy husband, and how thou hast left thy father and thy mother, and the land of thy nativity, and art come unto a people which thou knewest not heretofore. The Lord recompense thy work, and a full reward be given thee of the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings thou art come to trust. Then she said, Let me find favour in thy sight, my Lord, for thou hast comforted me, and for that thou hast spoken friendly unto thine handmaid, though I be not like unto one of thine handmaids. And so we see that she looked different, and she was a foreigner. And Boaz said to her at meal times, Come hither and eat with my men. And when she was risen up to glean, Boaz commanded his young men, saying, Let her glean even among the sheaves, and reproach her not, and let some of the handfuls fall on purpose for her, and leave them, that she may glean them, and rebuke her not. And so she gleaned in the field, and she went home. So now we see that Ruth and Boaz have met and become known to each other in a personal way. And we see that Boaz calls her my daughter. And this gives her another idea that Boaz is old enough to be a father. And so we see that he doesn't address her as an equal, he addresses her as a younger woman. And Boaz, of course, knows that he is a near kinsman to Ruth, but Ruth doesn't know this yet. She just sees him as a rich landowner who's been kind to her, and she hasn't got any idea yet what's going on in Boaz's mind. So Ruth goes home and she reports what's happened to Naomi, verses 18 to 20. And she took up what she had gleaned and went into the city, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned, and she brought forth and gave to her that she had reserved after she was sufficed. And her mother-in-law said unto her, Where hast thou gleaned today, and where wroughtest thou? Blessed is he that did take knowledge of thee. And she showed her mother-in-law with whom she had wrought, and said, The man's name was Boaz, the man's name with whom I wrought today is Boaz. And Naomi said unto her daughter-in-law, Blessed is he of the Lord, who hath not left of his kindness to the living and to the dead. And Naomi said unto her, The man is near of kin to us. So Naomi knew, of course, who he was, one of our next kinsmen. Now she's not saying he's the next. She's saying he's one of our near kinsmen, one of the next kinsmen. And Ruth said, He said unto me also, Thou shalt keep fast by my young man until I have ended all my harvest. And Ruth said to her, Yes, will you do that, my girl, because that's a good thing for you to do. And Boaz, he knows that he's a near kinsman, and Naomi immediately sees the opportunity of redemption. Now let's go back to Ruth 1:9, verse 9. We looked at it before. The Lord, Naomi said to the girls, Go return to your mother's houses, each of you, and the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. And this is what she added. The Lord grant you that ye may find rest, each of you, in the house of her husband. When Naomi is telling her daughters-in-law to go back home to their people and their God, she says, The Lord grant that ye may find rest. Now this word rest in the Hebrew is a very interesting word. It's closely related to the word used in Genesis 2:2. When God had created everything, it says, on the seventh day God rested from all his labours in creation. And it means, this word means to enter into rest that is permanent and eternal. God didn't start again and create again. He'd finished the creation, so he rested from that permanently and eternally. It's not just a time of relaxing or sleep. Look, we say, I'm going to take a rest, so we go and have a lay down, and we get back up and we work again. Well, it's not that. It's a different word altogether. We come to that word later on, but it's a permanent state of rest that continues. And this is what Naomi desired for her daughters-in-law. So now, in Ruth 3:1, we see that Naomi sees the opportunity for Ruth to enter into this rest. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said unto her, My daughter, shall I not seek rest for thee, same word, that it may be well with thee? And she said, I'm going to try and get you this rest for you to enter into. And how was she to do this? Well, she understood that this rest was available in Boaz. If Boaz, as the kinsman, would redeem Ruth, then she would enter into this rest, because it would mean that she would then be married to Boaz, and everything that he had would be hers, and so she would permanently enter into this rest. So Naomi sets in motion the events that follow. Now, a period of time goes on here. They are doing the wheat harvest when they start, and Naomi sends her out to glean. And then they finish the wheat harvest and they do the barley harvest. And there is months go on, 3 or 4 months at least, maybe more. And all this time, Ruth is gleaning in Boaz's fields as the different crops are harvested. And it comes the end of the harvest, and all the stuff has been brought in what we call stalks. They cut off the wheat and the barley, and they gather it all together and they tie it in bits and they dry it out, and then after it's dried out it has to be thrashed or threshed, however you like to look at it. And so we see that we come later in time, and it says now, Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said unto her, My daughter, shall I not seek rest for thee, that it may be well with thee? And now is not Boaz of our kindred, with whose maidens thou wast? Behold, he winnoweth barley tonight in the threshing floor. So winnowing, that means that they've brought it in to the barns in the stalks, in the where they tie it in little bundles, and then they've beaten it out. Now, some of it they beat out with rods, some of it they get the animals to walk over it with like a roller and roll it and whatever. But when they have beaten it all out, you've got the grain, and the grain is loose, but in among it is all the little bits of stuff that are broken off. And they've got rid of the bulk of it, but now they've got to get rid of all these little bits. So they have the grain, and they have like a barn, a shed. And in the shed, there's 2 levels. There's one up the top, and they take all the grain up there, and it's all got all this stuff in it, all the chaff, and it's open through, and so the wind blows through the barn, and they pour the grain and the chaff down, and the chaff blows away, and they get the grain down the bottom. Now that's called winnowing, and so they're winnowing the barley. And she says, Naomi says to Ruth, wash thyself therefore, and anoint thee, and put thy raiment upon thee. In other words, get yourself all dolled up, right? And get thee down to the floor, but make not thyself known until the man, until he have done eating and drinking. And it shall be when he lieth down, that thou shalt mark the place where he shall lie, and thou shalt go in and uncover his feet and lay thee down, and he will tell thee what thou shalt do. And she said unto her, Ruth said to her mother-in-law, all that thou sayest unto me I will do. Right. So Naomi sets in motion the events that followed. Ruth goes to Boaz in the threshing floor, and she makes herself known to him and requests that he redeem her. Verse 9. We'll read verse 8. Verse 6. And she went down into the floor and did according to all that her mother-in-law bade her. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of corn. And she came softly and uncovered his feet and laid her down. And it came to pass at midnight that the man was afraid and turned himself, and behold, a woman laid at his feet. That would have given him a shock, wouldn't it? And he said, who art thou? And she answered, I am Ruth, thine handmaid. Spread therefore thy skirt over thy handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman. And he said, blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter, for thou hast shown more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning, inasmuch as thou followest not young men, whether they poor or rich. And now, my daughter, fear not, I will do to thee all that thou requirest. For all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman. And now it is true that I am thy near kinsman. Howbeit, there is a kinsman nearer than I. Tarry this night, and it shall be in the morning, that if he will perform unto thee the part of a kinsman, well, let him do the kinsman's part. But if he will not do the part of a kinsman to thee, then will I do the part of a kinsman to thee, as the Lord liveth, lie down until the morning. So, Ruth goes to Boaz in the threshing floor and makes herself known to him and requests that he redeem her. Boaz has already anticipated this, as we see from his response. Boaz has obviously been thinking about Ruth all through the harvest. And he has admitted to himself that he's already fallen in love with Ruth. Now Ruth goes to him and she declares her love for him, and only to discover that he already loves her. He has already considered the implications. He has already checked the genealogy and found that he was a near kinsman but not the next in line. He knew all about it, and when the time came, he knew exactly what needed to be done. And so we see a wonderful love story here. Ruth comes to him seeking love, and he's already in love with her. And Boaz sends Ruth away before the morning, but he doesn't send her away empty. He gives her a gift, and this gift is a token of what's to come in the future. We call it an earnest. It's a gift that tells of what you can expect in the future. It's a generous gift, and it foreshadows for her the boundless provision that will be hers in Boaz. Ruth leaves Boaz believing that he will do all that he's promised. He says, and now, my daughter, fear not, I will do to thee all that thou requirest. All right?